Welcome to the Never Ending Experiment. This is Kim Anderson. This is episode 20, and this is going to be the final episode of season 1 of my podcast. I am taking a break for the summer. The same week that my book came out, I also got a job at a company called Sustainable Food Security, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm a grant writer and writer in general, and it's a company that builds greenhouses and starts community food hubs in different communities across Canada. They're all the way up in Inuvik. We've got some in New Brunswick, Ontario, British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan. So it's a really, really interesting company, and I'm going to be focusing on that. And of course, it's summer in Canada, and I am obsessed with plants, if I haven't mentioned it before, and I'm going to be totally focused on that as well and building my own greenhouse. I'm hoping to start my own little research greenhouse here in my home in Red Deer. So this job has got me thinking a lot about charity because I'm looking for grants, and charity is an interesting thing, and that's why I want to do this episode about do-goodery. Now, charity is great. It can be great. It can also be really, really bad. It's one of those things that if you do it right, you can really help people. And if you do it wrong, you can make bad situations worse. Now, the whole concept of do-goodery is, I guess it's kind of a sarcastic thing. A lot of us want to be good people. We want to do good things. I know I do. When I was young, I think I did have a bit of a hero complex. I was raised in superhero Marvel culture and start to think of yourself as potentially having these amazing abilities to save other people. I had fantasies about rescuing people, and I never thought that as an adult that I would become the person who needed charity or that I would become someone who needed the rescuing and not the other way around. And it's pretty depressing to have to realize that about yourself and then sort of come to realize that you have to really be your own hero. So even if you can't do anything heroic, and ideally you shouldn't need to, because we shouldn't live in a world that's full of so many bad things that we need all these people coming in and rescuing each other. So I think what it's taught me, sort of being on both ends, when I was younger, I was upper middle class and had a bit of money after high school. And I was able to give to charity for a long time. And you kind of pick the charities that make the most sense to you. But what I've learned now about charity is that it can become really self-serving for the people giving charity. There's a new kind of movement now, and one of the charities that we work with called LVE, which is in Lloydminster and Vermilion, are very much believers in community helping other community members. So it really isn't about philanthropy of a big rich person coming in and saving all the poor people. It's about people that have been through hardships being the ones who are able to reach out and help those people like them that have gone through similar situations, that are going through things that they may have gone through. And I think that's really important. I think that if you are one of those people who's had a very privileged life and you have a lot of money, you do have to be really, really careful about how you perceive other people and how you feel sorry for them. Feeling sorry for people can really hurt them, sadly. If you, say for example with me, if someone sees that I have a disability and then they feel bad for me, they're feeling bad. So what that means is that I go around making people feel bad. Well, that doesn't make me feel good, and that certainly doesn't change my life for the better in any way. What that does is it makes people avoid me, right? And a lot of people avoid those people that are suffering. You only have to watch or talk to people that have lived on the street to know how many people walk by them, and a lot more people walk by than stop to check on them or to give them money, and some people are even abusive. So unfortunately, we do have this hierarchical part of ourselves, and that's ancient. That comes from animal stuff. When you hear the pecking order, well, the pecking order comes from chickens. And sometimes they will perceive someone to be on the bottom. And unfortunately, what happens is when someone starts getting picked on at the bottom, then more people start picking on them and more people start picking them because they perceive them to be at the bottom of this hierarchy. But hierarchies can be really, really damaging. And I do think that we need to go beyond that and aspire to a more egalitarian kind of culture. Now, charity should, hypothetically, bring those people with a lot of privilege and take those extra things that they have and give them to the people that don't have enough. But what often happens is actually that they end up locking those people at the bottom into the bottom. And I think a lot of religion does that as well. A lot of people will use religion as a way to do good, but then what they really want is to control the people that they are helping so that they become part of their group. Now, we see that, in Africa, there's an enormous amount of Christianity and Islam, and a lot of that has come from the do-goodery of people that have gone there. And the colonial enterprise was, in a large part, a do-goodery enterprise. A lot of people truly believed that they were helping all these other cultures because their culture was the best, and why wouldn't they want their culture to come in and impose itself on the people there so that they could have a better life? That's the way that they saw it. But they didn't see the positives of the cultures that were already there and perhaps see that they actually had a lot of huge benefits to their culture that was helping them, especially when you get into indigenous culture, which is a long-term relationship with the land and with the ecosystems that are there. And if you come in as an outsider and it's incredibly shallow what people think of as better. It's always wealth. It always seems to be like, well, look at how much stuff we have. And it's very greed oriented, as though community and tradition and their language and their food, all of things which have sustained them often for thousands of years, are suddenly no big deal compared to phones and roads and, electricity and all these things, which you can actually integrate into those traditional cultures pretty easily without having to wipe anything out. So the whole idea of charity turning into some oppressive and self-serving cause is probably more prevalent than the genuine charities that are out there, unfortunately. And it's sad because ideally we want to live in a world where there is no charity. I know that is the ideal. And I think a lot of people that work in charity or that work in, this sort of fields of helping other people do get locked into the idea that people will always need help. And that comes back to the hierarchy perspective, which is that there are people that are naturally inferior and will always need other people to do things for them or help them or tell them what to do. And I think that's just the worst attitude to have. Now, of course, there are children and elderly that do often need a little bit extra help. That's just part of community. That's part of how we naturally live. And a traditional tribal or clan system would have people that would help with those things so children and elderly don't get abandoned. Unfortunately, we live in this sort of world where they do get abandoned. And I think the reasoning behind that is sort of that it's not anyone's responsibility. So that's the dark side of the individualist culture. But the individualist culture is also the same one, I think, that gave rise to charity. You can't really have charity in a culture that's so egalitarian that it's not needed because charity is already interwoven into the very fabric of life. You were expected to help other people. You always help other people. You've always been in that position. But I think the capitalist sort of agenda and the idealism of gaining status and gaining power and gaining wealth and the growthocracy has pulled people away from that sort of genuine helping of the people in their community. So the dark side of this do-goodery, and I've seen this quite a lot, and the example of the do-goodery is sort of when you can only see suffering in the other. And, if you think about rock stars that go on about children starving in Africa, Live Aid or all of these things that the rock stars are doing, or now with Gaza, it's like they don't seem to understand how many children are suffering close to them. They don't seem to understand how many children are suffering through child abuse, through neglect, of often very well-off parents. A lot of rich parents are really, really bad parents. They don't take good care of their kids. They send them to boarding schools. They ignore them. They are really harsh to them. They'll kick them out at 18 and won't let them come back. So that kind of ideology, that kind of lifestyle is exactly what creates charity, the need for charity in the first place. Why do people consider other people's children to be their responsibility when they've never met them, they've never been there? Or they go there as a tourist to sort of have the tourist experience. If you look at how much we're taught to feel sorry for Africans, it's really embarrassing. And a lot of Africans are expressing their embarrassment by this because they're surprised that that is the sort of attitude that the rest of the world has about them. And they want people to know that most of them are doing okay. And actually, a lot of their lifestyles are very ecologically imbalanced. In fact, a lot of them are eating, fresh vegetables and fruits and living a really low footprint lifestyle. And that is something that we are actually trying to do in the richer places, that's sort of an aspiration. So the whole idea of just feeling sorry for people because they were born in a country where they don't have as much doesn't really make sense when you look at the context. We waste so much time blaming people for where they were born when really we have really underestimated the influence of geography on how we live. The actual poverty that most people are talking about when they talk about the global south is actually the tropics. It's not the south at all, it's the tropics. Because our world is sort of misshapen and we have so much more in the north and in the south, then there's this perception that it's the south, the southern hemisphere, but it's not. It's completely the tropics. The tropics has a massive influence on people. But why is that? Why are the tropics so different? Because they grow so much food, because it's hot there. Hot countries can afford to be poor. This is something that nobody talks about or nobody acknowledges. When you don't have to worry about freezing to death, your lifestyle becomes very different. So the idea of charity to countries that you've never been to or don't know much about, even if you go there as a tourist, you're not going to get the full scope of what it means. It doesn't make sense to feel sorry for people just because they don't have as much wealth, because there are other things that they may be wealthy at. I feel envy for people that have strong communities, and I feel envy for people that have tight families that are able to take care of each other and that do good things for the people around them. And then you don't need anybody else doing good from some other country to come in and tell you what to do and give you money with a million strings attached, because there are always strings attached. It is a big sacrifice to take charity. That's what so many people don't understand, is that actually receiving charity is incredibly embarrassing, and it's shaming. You feel shame when you take charity. There's the expectation that the people receiving charity will be just delighted, and a lot of times, if it's giving them their life back, then yes, of course they will be grateful. If you're saving them from starving to death or from illness or from the cold, they're going to feel grateful. But deep down, if they know how many other people were in their situation that are still suffering, they're still in that place in their head. It's not that easy to get out of. And that is something that goes beyond the personal and beyond this one-on-one feeling sorry for people and into the question of, why did society get like this in the first place? A lot of people are working their butts off to help other people, to save them, but they shouldn't have to be saved in the first place. And that's really the bigger issue. So what I'm seeing in this do-goodery world is something really specific that I think is really harmful. This is the number one thing, is people with privilege who do not share with the people directly around them, and instead push those people away and make an effort to go outside of their world to give to people outside of their community. The poor little rich kids, like, that's a real concept that a lot of people don't get. And social services will easily look over mistreated children in rich households, very easily. A lot of those social services only see money. If you're poor, you need help. If you are rich, you don't. But that doesn't mean that rich kids don't get abused and don't get neglected. I remember there was a rich kid in the neighborhood where I grew up whose parents were completely absent. So he was behind in school. He was selling drugs to other kids. He was partying all the time in his household because he was alone. He was a teenager alone. And the social services will just completely overlook that kind of thing. And it's just crazy. So it comes back to the hierarchies that rich people honestly think that they are just like the best thing in the world, and they're really not. A lot of them live horrible lifestyles. A lot of them are incredibly wasteful, environmentally unfriendly. They often have way too many kids of their own, and again, they'll like send them to boarding school and they don't even really take care of them. And then they pat themselves on the back for giving charity to other countries that never asked for their help. It's just so arrogant. You know, our obligation is to our families and to the people next to us, but that doesn't mean that those are the only people that you should care about. But that's the shocking thing about the do-goodery people, is that they will abandon people in their own family and in their own life because they're manipulative control freaks. And then they go out of the way to virtue signal to the world that they're helping the children in other countries. They really think they're good people. Or here's an example: deciding that you don't want family dinner for Christmas because you're going to go down to the homeless shelter and give soup to the homeless. This is such an act of arrogance, to deny your own family an actual Christmas dinner together. That's why people end up on the street. That's exactly why those shelters exist. You've just sent your own children on their way to being homeless, to being unhoused, to being unemployed, because you have shut them out of a normal family. And you've given that instead to total strangers so that you can look like a good person, but you're not. If you shut your own family out of your life because you think they're difficult, and then you go through all this thing to like go down to where people really have it rough, and you show off how you're giving to them, but you have no investment in their lives. You don't know who they are. You wouldn't let them into your basement. You wouldn't let them into your lives. It's all for show. And that's why there's so much inequality, is because people don't take care of the people around them. And that is the dark side of charity that we all have to be really careful of. And I think there's been a lot of learning now, this generation, about how to help people in ways in which actually can get them being independent. But at the same time, you can't ever be so independent that you're just pushing other people away. So the arrogance in the philanthropy in the charity world really just blows me away. And a lot of people also don't have very good judgment about who is in that position because they really messed up versus someone who was in a bad position because they were mistreated. And those are really big differences. And a lot of people will just categorize all those people the same. So a lot of people spend their whole lives fighting to keep people out of jail, even though those people may have horribly harmed other people. And they put a lot of people at risk when they push to get violent offenders taken out of jail. Now, jail is a whole other topic of conversation, but the fact is that I don't see jail as a way to punish criminals at all. I see it as a way to protect the vulnerable from people who will harm them. Because if someone is bullying and hurting other people that are in a weaker position, they need to be stopped. You need to find a way to stop those people. And what I'm finding now is that's not happening as much. So actually, even though people are preaching, don't bully, don't do this, don't do that, a lot of people are doing it more because nobody will stop them. Because we've become so laissez-faire that, a lot of the jail system just seems to be used as some sort of political tool and not as a way to actually protect the vulnerable from being attacked. That's what a lot of people don't understand, that haven't been bullied, that haven't been victimized, is they keep defending the criminals as though they don't deserve to be in jail, when it's like, it's not about them deserving to be in jail. It's about the people they have victimized deserving to have a break from being victimized. That's really what it's about. It's about protecting vulnerable people from those who would harm them. And if all you do is feel sorry for the people that are harming others, you're really putting those vulnerable people back at risk again. So I do think some people do need to be in jail just because they become so dangerous that they just cause so many problems when they're out in society. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that don't know how to take care of each other, and they don't know how to take care of themselves. And so this vicious cycle just keeps going. Right now, rich people are causing the biggest problems in the world for two reasons. It's not just because of overconsumption, it's because they're reproducing the most as well. So we've got this group of people that have way too many kids. They're contributing directly to poverty, and they're consuming so much. And then they do all this philanthropy work, but they literally are the problem. If you're in a big family with a lot of children and you travel all over the world all the time, you are definitely the biggest environmental problem. And it doesn't matter how much you give to philanthropy or any of that, because you're literally creating the problem that you go in and try to save. And that's the same thing with religious people, because religion also is pronatalist. So they go to places where people are poor and then they push religion on them. And now all those people have more and more and more kids. And yet having more kids was exactly the problem of why there were kids starving to death in the first place. So they're just contributing to the problem. And so many philanthropists don't even understand that they are contributing to the problems that they think that they're trying to stop, because they just don't know enough. It takes really smart people and really compassionate people, which are quite rare in this world, to actually be able to solve problems at a higher level and to create a society that can actually be in balance. Because when we have a growing population of over 8 billion, we simply do not have the organizational capacity to understand how to organize our society in a way to prevent inequality. We don't have that knowledge. And I think that the psychotherapy world is contributing to this arrogance. And it's just another layer of missionary religious zeal. I think that a lot of people are approaching psychotherapy in the same way as religion. Like, oh, this is what people in war-torn countries need, is a bunch of people that don't speak their language to show up and try to tell them about their deepest, darkest secrets and all the horrible things that happen to them. And yet that doesn't help them at all. You don't need to guilt people that have too much privilege. What you have to do is give it away. Just literally give it away to anyone. The more people that you hire as a rich person, the more you are actually creating that trickle-down economy that people want. If you spend all your money on stuff and not on other people's wages, you are really leading to that environmental degradation that we see. You should be spending money on labor and other people's jobs, because that's how other people are able to live good lives. So that's something to think about. Our economy is definitely very messed up, and that's not one person's fault. But if we put our heads together and we really work together, then we should find a way to be able to fix the economy. And it's the same thing with technology. We don't need any new tech. We don't need any brand new thing. It's not going to save the world. What will save it is everybody using the technology in the best way that they can, in the most efficient way that they can now, in a small level, and to create communities where people are really looking out for each other and really helping each other, so that nobody falls through the cracks in the first place. So don't be a dick. If you're a dick to the people around you and you're abusive to the people around you, you can't be a do-gooder. Like, you can't do good for anyone else either. You're the reason why those other people are suffering more too, because they had some asshole like you treat them badly, and then it made that whole thing spiral downwards. So as far as charity goes, I think it's pretty easy to just give money or to, contribute to these larger causes, but I think it actually makes a lot more sense to be as local as possible and to make sure the people closest to you have what they need before you go trampling to other countries to try to, fix their problems. So, why be involved in charity? I mean, I think it's just, you have to sort of see charity as kind of a false category. It's same with like why you would have profit or nonprofit. The fact is that every business should really be for the public good. there shouldn't really be any business whose sole goal is to make money. And there shouldn't be any nonprofit that should be expected not to make a profit because they have to or they can't do anything. So these are really false categories that we have. And I think if you take a more holistic approach and see that like pretty much anything you can do in your life is going to contribute to the well-being of other people or for yourself. And that way you don't get locked into any sort of, complicated moral accounting, which is what a lot of people do. Is like, I'm doing bad over here, but I'm doing good over here and I'm making up for it. A lot of people sort of play that game. And if you just live your life better overall, then we shouldn't need charity at all. So we should really be aiming for a society that has no charity because we're all charitable enough in the beginning to ever get to that point where anybody's falling through the cracks. So that's my goal, and I hope that other people will take into consideration if they have locked themselves into a philanthropist lifestyle and they think they're really doing good. It takes a lot of intelligence to really solve large level problems. And so you have to be careful. Just tread carefully and listen. And that's the biggest thing that people don't do is really, really listen and observe the people that you think are in need of charity or the people that are asking for help to see what it is they really need so that you don't give them stuff they don't need, because honestly, giving a gift that someone doesn't need can actually turn into a burden, and you don't want to burden people that are already struggling. We want to be able to bring them back to a place where we're all equal and we're all able to contribute. We don't live in this hierarchical perspective where one person is better than another based on their income. It's just foolish. Of course, some people are better than others at certain tasks, and some people are better at charity. Like, that's true as well. Some people are really good at knowing what other people want. They're very empathetic. Some people aren't, and they push themselves into that world because they think they should, and they really don't help. And sometimes you just got to admit, hey, like maybe you don't have that ability at helping that you think you should have, especially women. They're told that they're nice and sweet and empathetic because that's the stereotype that they want them to be. And then they find out actually they're not that much. And then a lot of women get really, really ripped apart for being selfish. But it's like they were just given a false notion of themselves that they were supposed to be so kind and loving like a stereotypical woman should be. And they find out actually they're not. You got to be yourself, and you got to look at your own abilities. That comes back to my very first podcast that I did. You got to know yourself and know what you're good at. And if you're not good at charity, then you know what? Find a charity you like, give them money, and maybe don't volunteer. Don't get involved if you're not good at it. Honestly, sometimes that's the best thing to do, is to just do nothing. So that's my last episode on Do-goodery. I'm going to go try and do some good in the world for myself mostly. Get some food growing in the ground and get other people growing food in the ground in this cold, cold country of Canada. So thank you so much. If you have followed along with this podcast, please subscribe. And I'm going to be mostly on YouTube over the summer. I'm going to try and make some videos of these big changes we're making in the yard with the permaculture design and all other kinds of gardening philosophies, ethnobotany, working on this greenhouse. Hopefully I can get some videos of the fun stuff that I'm doing here and just falling in love with greenhouses. What an interesting world. It's like a bit of outside, a bit of inside, and lots of plants. So have a good summer. We'll see you again in the fall if I'm going to do a season 2. I think that I might do that. So stick around. But either way, if you follow me on YouTube, I think it's Kimby Dale, Kimbdayle. You can check me out there, Kim Anderson. Also on my website, kimberlyanderson.com, KIMBERLEYANDERSON. And of course, my book, Dreaming Life's Language. That is out. It's still not out in ebook. I'm working on that, and hopefully by the end of the summer I'll also be working on the audiobook. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm not in a very soundproof place, and I have to pause because there's a lot of cars and motorcycles, and actually a helicopter that went by just recently. So, but hopefully we can get this room more soundproofed, and then I can do that audiobook. So thank you for joining me. I hope you have a great summer. Thank you. This has been The Never Ending Experiment. Kim Anderson.